So joining us for the Q&A is Brian A. Cates, the executive producer and supervising editor. So I'll just quickly introduce Brian. Brian A. Cates is a New Jersey native and NYU alumni, a working editor in New York for over 10 years. Brian's credits include The Laramie Project, Tarnation, The Woodsman, and John Cameron Mitchell's Short Bus. Some of his early work includes Taking Chance, Nights in Rodante, and The Savages, starring Laura Linney and Philip Seymour Hoffman. His recent work includes Lee Daniels' The Butler, Killing Them Softly, Kill Your Darlings, and HBO's Trem. He's a two-time Emmy-nominated and winner for Outstanding Single Camera Picture Editing. And in 2018, he won for The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel pilot on Prime Video, and in 2009 for Taking Chance on HBO. So let's give a warm welcome to Brian.
Thank you for having me.
The first question was asking how the film's public response has changed before and after October 7th. And then just on that note about for you as a producer and just a part of the filmmaking process, what it's been like to navigate success amidst the political climate of today.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's changed. It's been night and day, as you can imagine. Everything's been night and day. It's a terrible, terrible time in Palestine and Israel and the world. When we premiered the film in February at a festival in Montana called the Big Sky Film Festival, and we got some awards, we got some good reviews over the past next months. But what's interesting for me, I mean, I'm not the director. Sam and Aaron are. I'm one of the producers. So I get to have a bit of an outsider point of view and see the way that the response happens without necessarily. This is really only the second Q&A that I've done. So first of all, thank you for having me. But I have a little bit of an outsider point of view, and from my eyes, I mean, I always, and I can speak, I think, for the rest of the team, that we envision this as very much an inter-Jewish dialogue, and that the film exists sort of in a like educational space for Jews to talk to Jews. Not only, and I don't think that art can be constrained that way, nor should it be. Art is going to be interpreted and used however people choose to use it. But it's interesting to me that something that we thought was very, I would even say, Hamish in a way, like something very sincere and telling sort of in a way all of the filmmakers' stories in some way, even though we're not in the film. But Eitan and Simone, I think, share a lot of biographical details with a lot of us, the producers and the two directors. And so to see it sort of move from a very kind of a private space where some niche film festivals were screening it and we were getting a little bit of response, then San Francisco Jewish Film Festival, which is a great festival, really responded to the film. Because of the ongoing genocide and because of the atrocities on October 7th against Israeli Jews and others, the climate has completely, the film has become a lightning rod. Honestly, a lot of people feel like they are able to claim what we do with it, who should see it, who shouldn't see it, what its power is, whether it's whether you can, you know, trash it or say that it's not unimportant, or, you know, like we've been slandered. We've also been called incredibly important. People who I never expected would have seen it email me and write me, people across the world. It's an incredible difference. And you know, you called it success. It is success in a way, but it's success that's built on a horrible tragedy. And I just hope that the original mission that I felt, I can't speak for everyone, but that I felt, which was to be able to be open and honest in our Jewish communities and educational spaces, can continue in a way that is less encumbered by what people impose on the film than what's actually in the film. Because I think that at this point those things are some have kind of drifted away a little bit in a lot of the strange publicity that we've received around trying to ban the film.
Another question that we had is in terms, obviously there are many different people and groups that are interviewed in this film. And we were curious if you could maybe elaborate on what that filming process was like. Yeah, across the different groups that are depicted, were they aware of, I guess, were they aware of the educational intention of the film?
Well, like any documentary, I mean, I work in both fiction and documentaries. In fact, I'm working on a documentary now. The intention isn't a constant. Like, it changes as you collect footage and you figure out what the strengths of the material is. So this movie began more as an exploration of North American Jews or diaspora Jewish attitudes towards the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And the first, I mean, I should say where I came in. I came in because I'm a professional editor. I sort of volunteered to look at cuts for Aaron and Sam. They had a Kickstarter campaign, and I believed in this film, and I really wanted to help out. So, a lot of my input was around the editing process, and it was a 7-year process. So the film used to have a much more expansive view of the history of the conflict through the eyes of Americans, Palestinian and Jewish. And we learned through having many, many interviews that we needed to reduce them down and be more character driven and really find an anchor emotionally for the movie, which became Simone and Eitan, because I think I don't want to generalize, but in general, movies are usually more effective if when they're character driven and there's a character arc and story that you follow. So we tried to be less encyclopedic about about everything during the Nakba, about 1967, about the various Gaza wars, and tried to make it more emotional and more character driven. So we interviewed many more people than are in the film and reduced it over the course of 7 years. It's a great question. I mean, I can't, I'm more of a filmmaker than an activist, so I really can't talk tactics, but I can say that I admire what, if not now in JVP, have been doing in the US. And I think possibly in Canada as well. But I feel like the line in the movie that sort of expresses that American Jews might be the most important voice to shift American public policy, that might be an overstatement. I don't know if I agree with that completely. I do think that it is mandatory to obviously to center Palestinian voices. And I always intended that this film, that's why I'm saying that I always intended this film to be more of an inter-Jewish dialogue. In fact, I have a Palestinian friend in Ramallah, and a couple of years ago when we were editing the film, by the way, I just want to mention the name of the editor is Tony Hale. And because I worked in post-production, I just want to prop him up and say that he did a wonderful job. But I remember talking to my friend, and I was like, we're making this movie about American Jews who are, or North American Jews who are Palestine solidarity activists, and it's their story. And it's kind of inside baseball, right? Would you want to see that movie ever? And she was like, hell yeah, I want to see that movie. I know. So like, I feel like there's the movie as again, as educational and like its enrichment value to show a community or a lot of communities and show an activist world. I don't think that it stands in the place of actual activism. I think activism and art are two different things. They overlap at times, and the people who make them can overlap. But I just want to be very wary of knowing the place of a film versus the place of direct action, which is the kind of stuff that JVP has been doing since October, in shutting down train stations and and entrances to the Senate. Whether or not you consider those tactics to be effective, I mean, I suppose they might have been for public opinion, which is very, very strongly for a ceasefire in the U.S. at least. But as far as putting a finger on the government and moving the needle, it seems like no, but who's to say? Could it be worse? Possibly. I don't know. But I really respect the question, and it's something that we all should think about. I mean, we focused it on Americans because the filmmakers are Americans. There are many, many films that could be made about Palestine solidarity across the world among Jews. I'm not an expert, but I know that there are similar groups in the UK. I certainly know of the Israeli groups that would support this mission and this film and Palestine. I also, I mean, to me, this is anecdotal, but I feel like anywhere where there's a large Jewish community, there is room for diversity and dissent. I know it's true of Argentina, which has a very, very large Jewish community. But again, I'm not an expert, and we never intended to make the movie that global. And in terms of the campaigns, I mean, I don't have all the details, but Barnard College, for instance, in New York, would not allow the screening to take place. They said it would be postponed. They finally unbanned it, and the screening was, I think, a couple of hours ago, actually tonight. But basically, there was an email campaign where I don't know what it's called when you do a cut and paste and you send it to a listserv, and then like thousands of people send the same email back as a sort of activist campaign. There was a campaign like that against our movie, and universities that were intending to show it were deluged with all of these carbon copies of the same email that came from probably a single source of people who thought that this movie was dangerous. And from what I understand, the university leaderships were reluctant to outright censor the film, but they said that it was not an opportune time to show it because of sensitivities, because of the war, and that it should be postponed. Which we think is, I mean, I can only speak for myself, which I think is incredibly duplicitous in a way, because I find that some of the safest and most nurturing spaces for conversation have been not the only ones, but these Q&As and these meetings after the movie have brought together Palestinians, Jews, and allies, and have open conversations about this genocide. And I feel like I feel like it's dishonest to say that these screenings and conversations are dangerous. They seem exactly the opposite to me. But there have been several cases of trying to ban the film in the US, at least. I can't. Well, I wasn't there when they shot the interviews, so I can't say. But I know that they that the filmmakers gave the questions to the interview subjects in advance so they could prepare, and they knew that it was a film about American Jewish attitudes towards Israel. And I know that they were, at least in the cases of, I don't know if it's the case for every interview subject, but I know that several were given a copy of the finished film before we had any kind of wide release. We still haven't been released, honestly. We've been showing it selectively at universities and Jewish community spaces. So it's it has not yet had a formal release, but we have offered the film for the subjects to see. So in terms of other communication, I don't really know how much, and it probably depends on which interview subject. I know that there is an intention to use some of those profits toward a Palestinian cause. In fact, that might have already come into being. I'd have to report back when I find out exactly how they plan to use that money. I also will say, though, that as a movie that is completely independent, it was not made by a corporation. It was not sold to a corporation. It's not distributed by a corporation. That none of that money is going to any nefarious I hate to use that word, but we're talking about corporations. Like, it's not going to anyone but back into the filmmaker's ability to continue to screen the film. So there are no bad actors who are receiving profits off of this movie. Whereas with any commercial film, you're giving money to a corporation, whether you watch it on Netflix or go to a theater or any other way. I wish I knew. I mean, I know this is a step. Obviously, this is a process that's going to take as long as it takes, but it is shifting. Part of it is generational, and part of it is just the last, like, this war, I hope, is the last straw. It won't be the last straw, but it's an inflection point. In my own life, I mean, like, again, the movie has not been formally distributed yet. My husband went to, as an anecdote, my husband went to Camp Kadima, which is a Jewish summer camp in Nova Scotia. He's Canadian, he's from Halifax. And he has had a private, it was a Zionist summer camp. I went to Zionist summer camp as well, but mine was in New York State. So my husband had the idea to, and he's an ally of the film, to have screenings for his campmates from Camp Kadima, and have Zoom conversations like we're doing now, but with his friends who he hasn't hung out with really since Zionist summer camp. So, I mean, in that tiny little way, we're trying to reach out to people who are friends, but also probably ideologically not that similar to us, and all coming from a Zionist background, to have these hard conversations and using the movie as a prop to help us do that. So that's what we're doing in our household. It's hard for me to think in terms of large scale. It's easier for me to think in terms of small conversations and intimate conversations with friends and family, because that to me is kind of the hardest and also the most important, because God knows social media conversations are just a disaster, and and direct action activist work is a whole other methodology that is not related necessarily to the movie. I mean, the truth is, in a sense, I feel like as a filmmaking team, we're lucky that the film was finished before October 7th, because I mean, I always said to the directors that current events are a moving target. Like, you can't ever be perfectly up to date, and the mark of a great film is that it has resonances for any period of time and any political situation. And that's about it being sincere and embodied, and having characters that actually are real, and and have interesting issues. So I think that this catastrophe is too gigantic for the film to it could never be a footnote, and it could never be an add-on. So in a sense, I'm glad that the film takes place in the past, about issues that are ongoing, the ongoing Nakba, colonization, and genocide. They happen in the past, they're happening in a catastrophic way now, but I don't think that chasing current events is healthy for filmmaking, because movies have to end and movies have to have shape. As an editor, like, you need to commit to a shape, and I feel like the film we made speaks for itself.